I think the most difficult thing about the job is that most, not all events, but most running events are so highly dependent on volunteers that over time, as some of your key volunteers retire, it's difficult to replace them, because what happens is that somebody comes in as a volunteer, they do a little bit, they do a good job, they take on a little bit more responsibilities. Pretty soon they're doing a lot. And when they want to turn all that over to somebody else, whoever that somebody else is, when they hear how much is involved, they usually say, oh, I don't have that much time. So that's the most challenging thing, is to just kind of keep new people coming on board, finding them and letting them sort of grow into the job. I think that's the most difficult thing. I think my job primarily, what I do day to day, is try to keep everybody moving forward. So some volunteers are really good about doing their own timelines and managing their own times, and some you have to kind of keep saying, have you done this yet? And when will you do this? And so again, I try to have a sense of the whole picture to make sure that everybody is kind of moving the things along, so we don't have one day when we find that somebody hasn't done anything. but they're all pretty good, so that it's not too difficult to do. And when this event started, there was no email, and email is a tremendous tool for contacting a lot of people simultaneously and saying, remember, we have a meeting tomorrow night. Or you people have to get together and have a meeting. Whatever it is, it's just so much more time efficient than getting on the phone or sending a letter through regular mail. So that's been a huge boom. And the other thing, of course, part of the evolution of technology has been being able to use the website effectively for information. And there used to be a time when the volunteers that we were getting, like the kind of, more the, not the key volunteers as much as the people who were manning the aid stations or helping hand out numbers, and they would call the office and say, I'd like to volunteer. Okay, so now if that's the way you're going to get your volunteers, you're going to have a long time on the phone, because you got to explain what are the different kind of volunteer jobs, what's involved, and get their contact information. Now, anybody that calls, we say we've got all of those jobs described under the volunteer button on our website. Take a look at them, see which ones are of interest to you, just click that button, that'll send an email to the person in charge of that area, letting them know that you're interested. And that's been a huge time saver, much different than our early years. Yes?
We're not New York or Boston or Atlanta, these big markets, but Spokane consistently turns up for these big community events. Food Fest, Bloomsday, the Iron Man. What makes it special about Spokane? Relatively small.
Yeah, it's a great thing. Yeah. A few years ago, Garrison Keeler, the radio guy, did his show from Spokane, and he said, and he mentioned Bloomsday, he mentioned Food Fest, and he says, obviously people in Spokane like to organize things. I thought that was really funny. But I think what we don't have is a lot of what I would call the distractions of a big city. All the other things going on that can pull people in a lot of different directions. And so when a big thing comes along, like a Food Fest or a Bloomsday, we tend to get people jumping on board to help. So I think probably the smaller size of Spokane actually helps us create some of those bigger events. I run all of them. And we have 105 people who have done every Bloomsday. We call them our perennials because they bloom every spring. Which is really amazing when you think that that's almost 10% of the people that did the first year have kept at it every year since then. We have, every 5 years, we have a luncheon for them, and we now have developed a trophy which will go to what we call Well, sometimes we call it the last man standing, but since the last man standing might be a woman, we also call it the Sole Survivor Award. And everybody was trying to hang on as long as possible to get that award. So I don't know when that's gonna, when somebody's gonna get that. The youngest person who's done all of them is about 46 years old, I think. So he's likely to be at it for a while. And he's got a couple other people that are close to age. So yes, I've been able to do all of them as well. I used to organize a St. Patrick's Day run, 5-mile run. I organized it for 20 years. I never ran it, not even one time. So the way that Bloomsday has kind of evolved with me, I was running it from the very first year. And so as I took on organizational responsibilities, I just sort of worked it around the ability to keep participating myself. And so far, so good.
Have you had any of what organizations go through growing pains and we inventing of who it is, what you do, what your mission might be, particularly with nonprofits? I've been in nonprofits where it seem to have to figure out who it is, who they are, what they do about every step of their career.
Well, we probably do that, actually. I don't know that we've changed dramatically, but we certainly have, because I say that because even the very first year, just not because of what I thought, but because of some of the people who came on wanting to help with this event. They didn't see it even that very first year as this is just for runners. They saw it as this is something that could grow and impact a lot of people's health and fitness in the community. And so really, I think probably the ways we have changed have been primarily to expand that sense of the event, that yes, it's an event for runners, but it's also an event that speaks to different things that people are interested in the community and different ways of getting them involved. So we have a retreat every year where we try to come up with, if we have to change the course on something, and not the route, but change course in what we're doing. So we kind of have that kind of discussion periodically at that retreat. And if somebody has an idea of something that they would like to do, very often somebody says, is this the direction we want to move? So we do have those discussions, probably not reinventing ourselves so much as just sort of adjusting the way we're moving.
How did you get into running, and like what has been your journey?
I got into running my sophomore year in high school. I was trying to get in shape for basketball. And I figured out, well, all I knew is one day the basketball coach came to me and he said, what are you doing to get in shape for the season? And I said, I don't know, what should I do? He said, well, why don't you turn out for cross country? And I thought about that over the years. I just know that Michael Jordan had that same discussion. What should I do to get ready for basketball? The basketball coach would not have said turn out for cross country. So he would have said, go shoot some hoops until you tire yourself out. So I figured out what had happened is in our PE class, they had us run this 2-mile course. And I did pretty well in it. And I know that the PE instructor, who was also the cross-country coach, then went to the basketball coach and said, why don't you convince this guy to turn out for cross-country? So I did, and found out I was a much better distance runner than I was. I like to say that with my skill level, I need to be about 2 feet taller to play basketball. Anything else?
No. How did you attract international competition to your business?
Well, the first year, I just sort of called Frank Short and I said, we come to our race, we got this thing going on, and I think we paid him to do a clinic. And for the first few years, this goes back, in those days, all runners were amateurs. You couldn't really be paid, but you could kind of be paid to do a clinic. So we had, for the first few years, we would pay people to come in and do a running clinic and talk to people about what was involved. And then about it would have been 1983, we got into a movement to actually put prize money into Bloomsday. And that's what really, so we're runners that sort of